Macron says 26 countries ready to send troops for Ukraine's ceasefire. 26 Western allies have formally committed to deploying troops by land, sea, or air to Ukraine the day after a ceasefire deal is agreed, Emmanuel Macron has said. Security guarantees for Kyiv would come into force the moment the guns fell silent, the French leader said, after a summit of 35 countries dubbed the Coalition of the Willing. However, hopes of a deal to end the fighting have dimmed since Russia's Vladimir Putin met U.S. President Donald Trump in Alaska last month. Prospects for direct talks between Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky look increasingly unlikely, even though Trump believes we're going to get it done. Trump spoke over the phone to Western leaders after Thursday's meeting, and Macron said U.S. support for their reassurance force would be finalized in the coming days. There was no confirmation of direct U.S. involvement, even though Macron said he had no doubt of U.S. willingness to be part of security guarantees for Ukraine. Trump recently indicated that U.S. backing could probably come in the form of air support, and Zelensky said he had spoken to the U.S. president about maximum protection for Ukraine skies. Kyiv had proposed a format for the U.S. to consider, he added. Trump also said the EU should work with the U.S. to halt imports of Russian oil and gas, to halt Russia's war machine by economic means, according to an account of the phone call from Finnish President Alexander Stubb. The 27-member European Union has set a target of ending all gas and oil imports by the end of 2027. A White House official pointed out that Russia had received €1.1 billion, £954 million, $1.3 billion, in fuel sales from the EU in 1 year, although the true figure is far higher. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said Western allies now had an unbreakable pledge to Ukraine, backed by the US, and had to press Russia to end the war, according to a Downing Street spokeswoman. Few countries have openly promised to deploy troops on the ground in Ukraine in the event of a deal, and the US has already ruled out such a move. European diplomats have suggested that committing troops at this point would probably help Putin's narrative against the West. Moscow has made clear that no Western forces should be deployed to Ukraine and has insisted that it should be one of the countries acting as guarantors, an idea rejected by Kyiv and its allies. Meanwhile, Russia was continuing to send troops into Ukraine despite the latest attempts to set ceasefire talks, Macron complained. In the latest violence, 2 people clearing mines were killed in a Russian attack in northern Ukraine on Thursday. Ukraine and its allies believe a ceasefire should be agreed before any attempt at securing a broader peace deal, although Russia disagrees. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said following the meeting that the first priority was to secure a ceasefire at a summit involving Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, and then provide strong security guarantees. Zelensky's top officials held talks in Paris with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff on Thursday. More than 3.5 years after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Putin said this week there was a certain light at the end of the tunnel, and that there are options for ensuring Ukraine's security in the event the conflict ends. The prospect of a direct meeting involving Putin and Zelensky has become increasingly unlikely since it was suggested last month by President Trump. Putin suggested this week Zelensky could come to Moscow for talks, an idea branded unacceptable by Kyiv. The Ukrainian leader said it was indication Russia did not really want the meeting to take place. NATO chief Mark Rutte said on Thursday that Russia had no veto on Western troops being deployed to Ukraine. Why are we interested in what Russia thinks about troops in Ukraine? It's a sovereign country. It's not for them to decide. Trump told CBS News on Wednesday that he remained committed to reaching a deal to end the war and said he continued to have a good relationship with both Putin and Zelensky. I think we're going to get it all straightened out, he said. Watch. My job is to make sure Ukraine stays in the fight, says John Healey. UK Defense Secretary John Healey has praised Trump, who he says brought Putin into talks and not closed off any options. The Russian leader, who spent Wednesday with China's Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, claims that his country's military is pushing forward on all fronts in Ukraine. He warned that without a deal, Moscow was prepared to resolve all our tasks militarily. Russia has rejected the idea of an initial ceasefire, insisting its campaign will not end before a full peace deal. A source at the Élysée Palace suggested ahead of Thursday's talks that there were several historical examples of ceasefires that had lasted without a full peace agreement. The source pointed to the demarcation line between North and South Korea, where a ceasefire had lasted for years with a powerfully armed, allied American deployment serving as a signal to North Korea. That concept was extremely important for the Ukrainians, the source added.